I'm Teresa Caraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. My topic today is David Graeber, foul play? My question will be whether David Graeber was murdered, assassinated, culled, or killed by his own ideology. I'll be looking at this with the help of Crow, the gumshoe detective, and his feathered friend, Tobin Owl. And yes, I know that crows and owls are not foul-weather friends, but the bad puns will continue until morale declines. David Graeber has been the greatest influence on my thinking over the past decade, and definitely the greatest influence on my book, How to Dismantle an Empire. This is primarily through his Debt the First 5,000 Years. But I have loved all of his writing. The Utopia of Rules is an amazing, interesting book to help you analyze why things are the way things are on technology, stupidity, and the secret joys of bureaucracy. And of course, his famous bullshit jobs. Where would we be without that? But the one that has been the object of most of this discussion is the dawn of everything. And that's what we'll be looking at today and what Crow analyzes. Murder most foul. Crow has crowed that he is the leading proponent of the theory that Graeber was assassinated by his wife. In his essay, The Wisdom of Candiarunk, he writes, about a year after he died, a book called The Dawn of Everything appeared, which was allegedly co-written by David Graeber and his longtime collaborator, David Wengrow, a British archaeologist. The book is an enigma wrapped in riddle. One reviewer called it a savant idiot mix of dazzling success and ridiculous failure, and I'd say that sums it up nicely. Many people have expressed amazement that a scholar as brilliant as Graeber could say so many stupid things in a single volume. If you're curious, Crow writes about exploring this rabbit hole, I would highly recommend starting with the excellent series of videos produced by the always illuminating What is Politics YouTube channel. And I have watched all 4 of those, and they are really interesting. I'll be responding to them later when I get to Graeber's ideology, but I recommend them and I have linked them in my Substack. Crow continues, if you ask me, it's not enough just to say that the dawn of everything is puzzling. David Graeber died mysteriously while working on a book which aimed to change the course of human history. But the book that was actually released after his death is a full-on anti-anarchist polemic. Let's put 2 and 2 together, folks. There's an obvious explanation here. He was assassinated because his ideas were dangerous. I believe that the dawn of everything was based on Graeber's real writing, but that it was heavily edited in order to support status assumptions, says Crow. Lame duck conspiracy theory. Crow writes, the cause of death, according to his wife, was necrotic pancreatitis. On October 6, 2020, Nika Dubrovsky, who had married Graeber a year earlier, made a blog post entitled My Opinion on David's Cause of Death, in which she wrote, many people have asked me what the reason for David's death was. The Venetian hospital stated in autopsy's results that the cause of death is massive internal bleeding caused by pancreatitis necrosis. I want to add my own conspiracy theory. I firmly believe it is related to COVID. It was tough for David to abide by the rules of isolation, not to go to the cafes, not to meet with neighbors. He hated masks and continuously tried to reuse single-use gloves. David gently complained about me to his friends, telling them how I torture him. In general, David was a heartfelt person, and his whining was in many ways boasting. Look how Nika takes care and worries about me. However, I send rays of hatred to the careless idiots who giggled at my efforts to isolate and advised David to ignore my demands. Of course, I know that I am the one to blame. David was an obedient Jewish husband. I could have put my foot down and demanded we leave immediately and spend the entire lockdown self-isolating in a remote village somewhere. But I didn't. I don't know why. I didn't want to be a control freak or a strict wife. We both started having strange symptoms in March. About once a week, we'd get headaches, felt muscle pain, tingling in the lungs, extreme tiredness to the point of not being able to talk on the phone, just continually wanting to sleep. Then everything would go away, but after 5 to 8 days, the symptoms would repeat. We cared for each other tenderly. We brought tea with ginger and lemon and vitamins to each other. I mostly slept all day, and David took hot baths. Later, I recovered completely, while David developed strange new symptoms. It all started with a peculiar soapy taste in his mouth. He felt it after meals and said it continued throughout the day. We stopped using washing liquid on our dishes. David went to the dentist and had his gums deep cleaned several times to prevent inflammation. He got several root canal treatments. We didn't know what else we could do. He got an antibody test. The result was negative. A while later, he began feeling a tingling sensation in his fingertips. He attributed this to practicing too much guitar playing. Then the tingling began in his toes and legs too. Fatigue, mild but persistent abdominal pain, digestive disorders, but primarily constant fatigue. We consulted various doctors. We did various tests, first in London, then in Berlin. All the doctors said the same thing. There are no obvious symptoms, but you have post-viral syndrome. Wait and everything will pass. And we waited. David was tested for COVID at clinics in Venice with negative results. When I asked if his death could be related to COVID, the doctor replied, "If you test positive for COVID, then you have COVID. A negative test does not mean that you do not have it." And I feel the same way as his doctor. I feel that COVID was a reason why he developed this strange and bizarre illness so rapidly. I blame for this the joke government of Boris Johnson and general human stupidity and self-reliance. David died of necrotic pancreatitis and internal bleeding, but why suddenly the healthy, never drinking alcohol David would develop this disease? Why would it be so sudden and quick? Why did such strange symptoms accompany it? Why did it start right after we thought we had COVID? So Crow continues, let's recap. One of the most important anarchist thinkers in the world dies mysteriously after complaining to his friends of a soapy taste in his mouth, which is a symptom of poisoning. And no one finds his death a wee bit suspicious. Furthermore, his wife, who presumably inherited his estate, blames his death on a non-existent virus, despite the fact that he died of internal bleeding. Do viruses cause the rapid onset of internal bleeding now? Since when? Let's analyze this, starting with the premise of murder. Although I think there are overlap in these categories, I think that murder and assassination are mutually exclusive. I would define murder as being for the reasons that Crow mentions, wanting someone's estate, wanting revenge on them for some reason. There are personal reasons, and that is a personal act. Political assassination is a different story, and that could be a possibility, but I don't believe it would then involve the wife. I initially looked at when the wife got together with Graeber or first met him, and she has a picture that she posted on her son's 18th birthday And at that time, he's very small. And she says, this was the same time that I met David. So it would be a very long game if she were to have been playing that in order to be part of a political assassination. She also calls him the best man in the world repeatedly, and all of their photos are very chummy. She is an attractive woman. Having 2 young children, I think, would appeal to David from the little I can extrapolate of his personality. And he describes never having had someone who wanted to spend the rest of their life with him. Little did he know that that would be a year. But it doesn't seem to me that that is necessarily something that she would be doing as part of some political ploy. Nika strikes me as naive, gullible, someone not extremely intelligent. She gets suckered into different causes. One that she has supported with David, and something they founded, is called the Yes Women. And this is for German women pensioners who have lost their pensions because of their mothering process or divorce or something like that. And she talks about how she apologizes to her son for not having been a very good mother. This seems like she is insecure and maybe a little immature. I think she fell hook, line, and sinker for the COVID narrative. When she talks about, I killed him, I should have insisted that we went someplace remote and completely isolated, that to me is someone who is not out to surreptitiously use COVID as a way of actually killing him, but someone who really believes in the state and their power and that they should have protected him. Next, I'll look at assassinated, and I'm seeing that as being a targeted individual. That seems entirely plausible to me, especially because they were both sick. This is not something, though, that I think was done because of his essay on Candiarunk. I found that The Dawn of Everything was true to the overall message of what he was saying about Candiarunk, and I'll attach my episode on Muskrat Love and Anarchy that is specifically on Candiarunk. So I think that's something we should definitely consider, but I don't think that that was particular in order to prevent that. I think it's because he has always been a thorn in the side of the establishment and continues to be so after his death. The next question is, was he culled? Was he part of a general depopulation program? I think that is entirely plausible because even though his death would have been before the vaccines got rolled out, there were so many things that were not a virus, but were mimicking those symptoms. One that I seriously consider is the snake venom theory. And I've done some episodes looking at that. I also think that there are frequencies that were impacting people. And I think parasites are another strong possibility. These are all things that would have been mitigated or cured by things like ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. And those are clues that I think we should look at that could have caused these strange symptoms that were certainly not the result of a virus, but he would definitely not be the only person who died from those very strange and unrelated seeming symptoms. In the end, however, I believe that David Graeber fell victim to his own ideology, because like Noam Chomsky, David Graeber was never an anarchist. He doesn't think like an anarchist. He sees government as something that should be needs-based, should be providing for people. And that is completely different. He believes in universal basic income. He also believes in the guy thing of the techno fix, that robots are going to do all the work, and so we just need to manage our leisure. I think that is a ridiculous premise, and I think women who do the work of maintaining our lives see through that more readily than men. He also believed in the health system of the state, that Nika said that he believed so much in the public health system that he would not see a private doctor, and that's something that could have changed things. Now, getting out of that whole system and seeing someone who would have given him alternatives could have saved his life. But he didn't believe in that. He believed that we should be in these groups that are really too large, I believe, for any system of anarchy. When I happened to be on an overnight stay in Manchester, I mailed a copy of my book to his address, his academic address at the School of London. And I never expected to hear anything, and I did not. I also had the publisher of Sun magazine who had wanted me to interview David. And so I tried getting in touch with him. I tried sending through his publicist the list of questions that I wanted to ask. I wanted to open up a conversation, since what I'm all about is how to create an economic system of small-scale sovereignty. Mine is an anarchist system. It says you leave alone the capitalist economy, you leave alone the socialist government, and what you do is create an alternative of something that is community-based and that is perfectly anarchist. That wasn't something that he thought about in those ways. So I think that in the end, his thinking kept him stuck in this way of depending on the state and feeling that the state would not be doing things to him, like inventing these illnesses. He believed in it. And that, I think, is what killed him. I highly recommend the very entertaining What is Politics, which has a 4-part series on the dawn of everything. He is critiquing it, but I see that as much more of an inner anthropologist debate, because he feels like David Graeber is giving short shrift to other anthropologists and going back to things that people have not believed since the 1960s. That may be so, but many of those ideas are still in the popular mindset. So David Graeber is putting himself up against people like Jared Diamond and Yuval Noah Harari, who are not anthropologists, but who do convey an idea that we should be reconsidering. And that primary idea is, how did we get stuck? And why do we think that we cannot change our system when people have been able to change their system? And yes, I agree with What is Politics that there are material constraints, that people are not just choosing. We cannot choose a better system for ourselves, by ourselves. I don't think that's what anarchy is. It's not going your own way. What is Politics taught me a lot about anthropology and gave me great terms like patrilocal and matrilocal, which I think is much better than matriarchal, which is a contradiction in terms. It looked at what the conditions were that supported gender equality and that fluidity that gave women power. And I'll be attaching another episode of mine from David Graeber on When Women Ran the World. In the end, David Graeber and What is Politics come to the same conclusion, which is that for 90% of our existence as a species, we have had egalitarian societies. That is our nature. There is not anything that is inherently hierarchical about society that needs to be that way. And that is really the focus that I think we should be bringing away from both of them and making it so. For more on faux anarchists, here is Noam Chomsky is the Problem, and this is a playlist on anarchy and anthropology, which includes the two I mentioned, along with another called Battle of the Daves, Sex and Power. Thank you for watching.